what it's like to evolve.
And I was lucky enough to be there, and Rachel gave this amazing speech, and somehow I cobbled together the phrase self-care activist out of it. Apparently, these were not actual words that were in the speech, but I wrote it down and I got all excited and was like, yeah, that's what I want to be, a self-care activist. And then I had the opportunity to start the show. So really, it was, you are the influence.
I feel so honored and flattered, and I can totally see how that group of self-care activists, that group of words would come out of my intention for delivering this keynote. I do have one slight what would I say, like shift in language, and that is that I'm not a model for self-care, but I model self-care. So more of a verb than a noun, because I continuously work at it and stumble and fail and get back up and repair. And
I don't. No, I'm just kidding.
But I do work to model it for other people, and I think that is a radical act in and of itself, is just modeling the importance of self-care.
So tell me a little bit about or share with us your journey to this place. Like, you were an activist. Talk about that.
Yeah,
a little bit.
I guess it started in my entryway into activism started in high school. I was drawn into the punk scene, and in Florida, in St. Pete, what that meant is you get together with your friends and you discuss how angry you are and how you don't understand the world and how everyone's a hypocrite. And
it was a lot like that here too, okay? Just so you know.
And then you play music and you charge money, and all of that money then goes to some important, like a piece of some movement. So whether they would give the money to like domestic violence shelters or animal shelters or anti-war work or something important. When I came up to Richmond, it felt like, and I tried to become part of the punk scene here, but it felt like they were raising the money for beer for themselves, and so it felt a little bit different.
Yeah. I would say that's true.
Yeah, it felt wildly different from the punk scene that I grew up in. I know that there's punks out there in Richmond that are doing good work too, but that was sort of my experience. So that was sort of where I entered into this idea of activism, sort of in my blood, and just kind of grew from this widening disappointment with the way people acted and how, I was raised with these certain like values of this is the way that the world is. And then when I actually was old, like a teenager, like old enough to start opening my eyes and seeing how it actually was, it was wildly different. So I think we protect our kids, and I get that. I have kids, I get protecting them, and also I won't do it because it was too much of a shock for me to find out this is actually the way the world is, and it's very broken, and we hurt people a lot.
Yeah. Wow. So when you were engaged in these activist activities, and hopefully correctly recall from your keynote that the way that this made you feel was important, like disappointment, or was there what were you describing in the?
Yeah, I was disappointed. I was angry. I was anti everything. So that sort of came, a few years later, and through a lot of education and like I would say self-education. So like a lot of work deconstructing what I had learned, what I was supposed to know, and reconstructing, both myself, like my identity, and also a historical sort of picture, like that felt a little bit more accurate. And as we know, we're like constantly readjusting what we know about history when we hear from people who aren't part of the dominant group, right? So like history is a social construct too. It's always changing.
Oh yeah.
So relearning history, relearning about like my identity and who I was. And I was angry. I was really angry at what I had been handed. I think in my keynote, I was like, anti-racist, anti-fascist, anti-sexist, anti-capitalist, anti-war, anti-traditional family units, anti-Republican and anti-Democrat because they weren't left enough.
Right.
Anti-meat, anti-car culture, anti-oppression.
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot of negative energy floating around, being opposed to things.
Yeah, it was all resistance all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready to be angry at anyone who crossed my path, and that is, you've known me for a while. That's not my natural disposition.
No. I would say that's the opposite experience that I've had of Rachel. Yeah. So something had to trigger this change for you. Mm-hmm. Was there an incident or just the learning, the expansion of learning history and about the world?
The trigger for when I became sort of
pro. I remember you saying something wouldn't it be interesting to be pro things instead of anti everything?
I mean, it started with some burnout. It started with deepening, worsening depression and anxiety. Mm-hmm. And I'm an optimist, but also I have struggled with anxiety and depression my whole entire life. And so all the activities I was engaged in were like making that worse, like really exacerbating, just I was immersed in the negative aspects of life and in the shadow. And it was like a deep depression. I actually didn't know what self-care was at that time. Mm-hmm. I only knew what it was to give of yourself relentlessly. And part of my depression was that I couldn't ever do enough. And I judged myself for that. And I also felt the judgment of my friends because I don't think I'm alone in all of this. It's like, you didn't show up to this meeting, you're not doing enough, and you're not involved in this group and this group. Well, it's all intersectional, so you have to show up for everything. And that made sense to me. And the sort of judgmental, the judgments I was putting on myself. I think that was sort of my impetus, was that there was nowhere to go. I was getting closer and closer to just trying to remove myself from the grid completely. Checking out communes, and there's some really good ones around Richmond, but they weren't really a good fit for me. I love nature, but I actually had I grew up in Florida. We had like the beach, but they weren't forests.
Right.
I had a chemically treated lawn in the suburbs. So
right.
It didn't really set me up for this like nature adventure life.
Making hammocks at Twin Oaks or something.
That was, I think that life looked beautiful to me. And I
it does look beautiful.
I visited, and it's great. It's a great fit for the people who live there.
Yes.
And I visited there and had this sense of their deep satisfaction with life.
Mm-hmm.
They had like a stillness about them. That was really, really appealing. I had never had that stillness. That stillness doesn't come to me naturally, but it's a practice. And so I practice it, and probably differently than they do, but it was really cool to be exposed to that stillness. So I knew it was out there, and I knew it was possible.
But maybe that lifestyle just was, you needed something different for you.
I needed something different. I needed to stay sort of on the grid. That was I'm also like wildly extroverted. So connecting with people, it's not an option. I have to connect with, and not just like with 10 people or 50 people, but like hundreds of people. I have a beloved community in Richmond of hundreds of people, and I love every single one of them. I know that's hard for some people to understand, but when you are on that end of the spectrum of extroversion, that's what your love looks like. It's wide and varied.
So you said something really important a minute ago about how as an activist, when your anti everything phase, that you were felt like you couldn't do enough, and you were burning out. And I think that's really important. Like, part of the premise of this show, what I want to bring to people, or the message I want to bring, is if you're going to be an activist of any kind, if you're going to be of service of any kind, you have to take care of yourself first. And I think this is a very difficult concept in our culture, particularly as women. I'm not ruling out men here. I'm just saying, particularly the message over time repeatedly has been, you give and give and give and give, and that's your job. That's your role. And I was just hearing somebody say today, it's almost impossible to take time for yourself. And I'm like, only if you make it impossible. So it's very possible, there's loads of time. That's not the issue. It's how you choose to spend it. So you're at a place where you're giving and giving and giving, and you're still in a role very much where you give and give and give. What's the difference now?
Yeah. Well, it's huge. It's huge. And it encompasses, like, I don't know, 20 years of work.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I could collapse all of that into one phrase, it would be that I know that I am enough, that I have inherent enoughness. So I don't have to do, all I have to do is what I can do. And that's going to be different from what you can do. And that I don't need to compare myself to you. I just need to do what I can do. And sometimes things like walking in the woods is self-care, and sometimes activism is self-care, because I can't pretend like what's happening in the world isn't happening. It's all part of my space. And so I don't want it to seem like I don't do any of those things anymore. Like, those things, all those anti-things, those like wildly, that's my shadow work, that like wildly informs what is important to me. It's like, I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my gut. Anytime something happens, that's my conscience. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but that is still my work. I just come to it from a very different perspective now, which is pro-liberation and pro-interconnectedness. I firmly believe in the interconnectedness of all of life, and that all this nonsense of othering, exclusion, is just that. It's immature nonsense. So
compartmentalizing, even.
Oh yeah.
Like this action doesn't affect that action, or what I do doesn't affect this. Or it's just, you're right. It's nonsense. It all works together. There's no escaping that. Economic policies are, have to be based this way in order for everyone to thrive. Because if you oppress a certain group of people, you're only hurting your own livelihood. I mean, even if you want to boil it down to material things, if you want to bring it up to a higher level of consciousness, absolutely, it's all interconnected. So,
and I love that Ruth King talks about that concept really beautifully. She talks about this ultimate reality, which is where we recognize our interconnectedness, and then she talks about relative reality, which is where we are right now. And so I think I see in this field a lot, like in the work of the Inner Work Center, there's something what I would call spiritual bypassing, where you were like, no, it's just the oneness. It's like, yes, we recognize that, and we also recognize the othering that's happening right now. That's like what real people are experiencing in their day-to-day life. We can't skip over that part, even though, yes, we believe in the interconnectedness of life. We also, at the same time, see that you are being othered, and that hurts.
And there's a need to rectify that. Yes. Okay. Awesome. This is Rachel Douglas of Inner Work Center. I'm Mary Burris. This is Self-Care Activist. We're on WRWK 93.9 FM. If you would like to call with a comment, a question. Maybe you've attended something at the Inner Work Center that made a difference in your life or not. You can give us a call at 804-464-1089. That's 804-464-1089. I'm here with producer Ron Skinner. That's Ron's favorite noise to make in the microphone when I introduce him. And we have an awesome volunteer in the station today, Stephen Johnson, who will be sitting in for Ron when Ron goes on vacation. Ron not only is my producer, I'm very lucky to have him, but he is the primary donor of the station. So support for WRWK is provided by Ron Skinner and listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Okay, so gosh, Rachel, like in 15 minutes, we just had such an amazing talk. Thank you. And you know, it's so funny. We were like 5 minutes in. I was like, oh, I told Rachel before we started that we were going to ohm in. And I forgot to do it. I was like, oops. So we could just have a little ohm right now. So ready? Take an inhale for ohm. Beautiful. Thank you so much for ohming in with me. The ohm in yoga is the universal sound, and it reminds us when we practice, begin our yoga practice and when we end our yoga practice, that we are connected to the greater energy and that the greater energy resides within us and vice versa. So it's perfect. It was perfect to ohm in after what we were just talking about. So yes. All right, I have a list of questions for you, and I have my little computer has gone blank just as we were getting to the good part. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Inner Work Center?
Yeah, I would love to. So we are a 25-year-old nonprofit. So we've been around for a really long time, but 21 of those years was as an all-volunteer organization, and so run very similar to this one in a small office by a brilliant founder and her friends, and they told their friends and they told their friends, and 10 years later they're moving into a space in Carytown, and it started to become more. People started talking more about this concept of being spiritual but not religious. And so we talked about spirituality as living a meaningful life. What we found, what I started finding out immediately when I would tell people the mission of Chrysalis was to encourage people to think about spirituality outside the conventional boundaries of any one faith or tradition. So it's okay if you have religion and it's okay if you don't, but we're not talking about that. What we're really talking about is spirituality. So this idea of living a life that feels meaningful to you and that you are the authority on that. So you craft that. You get, you don't need a framework. If you want one, it's fine. What I kept running into is that I would share the mission and people would say, but I have religion, so I don't need that. Mm-hmm. Or they would say, but I don't want religion, so I don't want that. And so there's this like thread between spirituality and religion that we didn't see existing, and many Richmonders feeling that and expressing that to us. So we changed our name after 25 years to the Inner Work Center, but it wasn't just our name. It really was our language. We had this kind of stoic professor feel, because we wanted to share with the Richmond community the level of integrity and wisdom and knowledge and just like certifications and everything that this faculty had. And it's super impressive. But it made it a little bit more inaccessible. And so it was the word spirituality, it was the sort of tone that we were using, and then the word chrysalis, which is a gorgeous poetic word. And if you remember your third grade science, you know that it means when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, they go through this transformational process. And if you know a little bit more, you know that it's like ooey gooey and it's really hard work and it's ugly. And then there's freedom at the other end. Oh, freedom at the other end.
There's flying at the other end.
At the other end. Yeah, we don't know if the caterpillar might feel free. But to be able to make that leap was hard for people to say, okay, so I get it. So that means that they offer programs that, transformational programs for people. And then we were across the street from the Aquarium bookstore, who we love. They were our beautiful neighbors, and they sell crystals. And that's great, but that's not what we did. But people would say, oh, it's Crystallis.
Oh.
So there were a couple, but people don't know how to say Crystallis or spell Crystal. So anyway.
I don't know how to spell it, and that's embarrassing.
So
yes.
Barriers. Even though we loved, it was a perfect word for what we did. It was poetic and beautiful and perfect. We realized that if we wanted to invite more people in, then we had to change that name.
You had to end the otherness that the name created limitations in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
It just wasn't accessible.
Yeah. Well, I think Inner Work Center is beautiful.
Yeah, I love the Inner Work Center. And so with the Inner Work Center, we felt like it had clarity. So that was like our main driving, thing, was giving clarity for accessibility's sake. And we changed our language mostly to what is hopefully perceived as like a trusted friend. Like, we are doing our work right alongside you, but we've been doing it for a really long time. So come and do it with us. Our mission now is to be a catalyst for well-being through programs that inspire curiosity, cultivate mindfulness, and awaken the spirit. And
wow,
it feels like a reflective mission for the work that we're doing. It's just more expansive than the work that we ever did before, and that's because you could do so much more when you have paid staff.
Right.
So we let's see if I can remember our vision too, because it's really beautiful off the top of my head. So we envision an individual and collective human experience that's rich with authenticity and compassion and meaning. Something like that.
That's beautiful.
I love it.
It's awesome. Okay,
Right.
So thank you for sharing about the Inner Work Center, formerly known as Chrysalis. So I'm curious, like, how has bringing your focus on self-care changed your life?
Yeah. So the words that I use to describe the change in my life, there are two words that I mainly use. One is resilience, and one is freedom, which I am really careful with because it's not the type of freedom that we're actually usually talking about. It is the freedom to know, like, I'll talk about freedom first. So it's like the freedom to know which work is mine to do. So going back to the activist thing and where I plug in, you, me, anyone can't do all the things.
Right.
We can't, even though it is all connected and intersectional, we can't do every single thing. And even within every single issue, it's like, do you engage at the one-on-one level, or do you engage at a policy level, or do you engage in, in your neighborhood? Or there's so many different entry points even to each issue. So getting rid of that whole, you have to do everything, that is what freedom feels like to me. Freedom is knowing through, knowing myself, knowing what my gifts are, and my personal story and how that informs the work that I do, and what is my work to do in the world. So it means that I can say no. It also means that I can say hell yes, like Brene Brown, just give me a hell yes. Am I allowed to say that?
Yes,
Okay.
you are. This is public radio.
Yeah.
There are other things you're not allowed to say, but you can say hell yes.
Okay.
Hell yes, you can say that. All right.
So that's essentially it's freedom within me. That is a huge part of doing this work. And then the resilience piece. The resilience piece is sometimes surprising because you actually don't know what's going to come your way every single day. You don't know where your struggle is going to be. If it's going to be like, oh, I have a flat tire, that's struggle. It's valid struggle. Or, really big things that happen to you in life. And so you prepare for those things. And that's what a practice is. So that's like my meditation, my mindfulness practice has helped me develop resilience when I am challenged with, things that I didn't expect. difficult conversations or difficult circumstances, or when I'm feeling hopeless, I can more easily find my resilience. The best, I'm just checking the time because I have an interesting story to demonstrate that. But so do I have time to?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Okay, so the best story I can share that demonstrates my resilience is my birth stories, my 2 different birth stories. So when I was pregnant with Bobby, it was a difficult pregnancy. And then
Bobby is your daughter.
Bobby's my daughter. She's 6 years old.
Right. Okay.
We had like a 40-hour labor, which ended up in an emergency C-section. She was,
goodness.
They call sunny side up, and she was trying to get out, but she couldn't get past my pelvic bone. And, the doctor came in. I worked with a midwife who was amazing. And then the doctor came in eventually after 40 hours and was like,
yeah,
you get the C-section or the mom dies and the baby dies. So we were like, let's go. I wasn't able to have that like golden hours, all these things that I really wanted to have out of this. I'd been preparing for this, beautiful experience, empowering experience. And that might not have been what I had. And actually, I think I had a lot of, it was traumatic and it was stressful. And I think I had some PTSD from it. I know I did.
Yeah.
And, it lasted for a really long time. And I still actually think that it creeps in sometimes. So when I got pregnant with Shia, he's my son, he's 2. He was due in August and he came in June.
Oh, so my.
He came so this is 4 years later it was 6 years later from when I had Bobby, but 4 years I had been at the Inner Work Center, 4 years into my meditation practice. So he came 2 months early. My water broke. I never went into labor. My water broke, and I had been dealing with some gestational diabetes, resulted in carrying excess water. Storm came through, barometric pressure dropped, and my water just broke.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So we were in between midwives and so we didn't actually have like a hospital. We didn't have anywhere to go, but I thought, well, 2 months early, this is pretty serious. So let's go to MTB. I'm really, really glad that we did that. They tried to keep him in. They tried multiple things, but he kept flopping on his cord. So it was one trip to rushing into the surgery room over and over and over until finally they decided that they were going to try to add more water using a catheter back into my uterus. And that's when I bled profusely.
Oh my God.
They had to rush me in. They said he's coming right now. The pain meds weren't working. I could feel them slicing across my belly. And so they had to put me under. So not only did I not just get my golden hour, which I missed with Bobby, which I was so devastated about, but I didn't get to see him for days because I was recovering. I was vomiting.
My heavens. Wow.
That I bled out.
Oh my gosh.
Turns out it wasn't true. But in the moment, I thought, okay, I almost died for this. And here I was very sick. I couldn't see my son. And I'm sharing all of this to say, I had no PTSD after any of that. I was able to accept every single thing as it came, knowing that all I needed to do was provide the love for the baby, that I was in good hands, and this practice of not being attached,
detachment.
Attachment is the root of all suffering. So
right, detachment.
So that helped me. So I didn't have the expectations that I had in my first. I was able to let go of those expectations. And just be with what was happening. And so that is what I mean by resilience. We were able to sort of bond and get going. I wouldn't have been able to do that had it not been for my mindfulness practice.
Wow.
I think it just cultivated in me this deep well that I was able to pull from when I really needed it.
That is an incredible story of the power of meditation and meditation as a self-care, and just I'm blown away. I'm just like, women who've had babies often share their stories. I will not share my story because it's so vastly different. But so now I'm curious, like, how often do you meditate? And tell us a little bit about your meditation practice. And the reason I'm very curious about this is because I have a private Facebook group, the Self-Care Activists. And if you're interested, feel free to private message me on Facebook, and I'm happy to send you an invitation. But meditation is the first thing that I'm talking about, because whenever I have a client, it's like, what's the one thing that I can do? It's like meditate. Like, yoga asana practice is really important. Learning breath work is really important. What you eat is really important. There's one thing that you should do that I recommend for self-care is meditation. So tell us a little bit about your meditation practice.
I would be happy to. First, I just want to distinguish that there's formal meditation and informal meditation, and both are really important. So there's the meditation that you typically think of, where your eyes are closed and you're focusing on your breath or your body or an anchor, or or giving loving kindness into the world. And I do that too. But for me, mindfulness is it's a practice that I have to call upon, like, every second of every minute of every day. It is a practice. And so it is not like, I don't think I'll ever arrive any place, but I think I will always be, now that I know what it feels like, that to have a practice, the assets that it gives me, it's always going to be something that I do. And so whether it's not listening to anything in the car and having moments of silence there, or centering myself before a meeting and thinking about my intention for that meeting and how I want to show up, all of those are part of my practice. For my formal practice, daily, it's really 10 minutes. I think I've seen plenty of benefit from that 10 minutes, but I also supplement it. I have to be really lucky and work at the Inner Work Center, so there's lots of opportunities there. So I practice with my kids. My wife and I take turns putting them to sleep. And when I'm with my son, actually from the moment I was able to hold my son, we started doing loving kindness meditations. One of my mentors at the Inner Work Center, Kay Davidson, shared with me, this is completely unrelated, years earlier, did you know that you can do loving kindness to a melody? You can put it to a song. And I remembered that. And we started doing loving kindness, and we would do it through just the whole day. It was skin to skin and loving kindness meditations. It's sort of it helped me get through those really long days in the NICU. We were in the NICU for 35 days.
Oh, man.
So we still do loving kindness every single night that I put him to bed. And sometimes he sings with me. He doesn't really talk, but he knows the melody, and that's lovely. And then when I'm with my daughter, we started out with using a children's app on, it's called Mindful Powers, and then we segued into me doing the meditations. And so we do sometimes loving kindness, sometimes we do a compassionate body scan, where we just give gratitude for all these little pieces of our body that we don't normally think of.
My fingernails.
Yeah, eyebrows.
My eyelashes and my earlobes.
How cool your nose is. It's like a filter and a humidifier. It
is pretty amazing. Yeah.
So that's a part of my daily practice. And then every Thursday at noon, we have a compassion meditation at the Inner Work Center, and I hardly ever miss it. I'm almost always there. And it's led by a group of people, and it's dealer's choice, so whatever they're feeling, in that moment. And for me, it's a really powerful practice. So it's not just cultivating compassion for myself, although that's a huge part of it, but cultivating compassion to send out into the world.
Oh my gosh, I'm putting that on my calendar for Thursday.
It's amazing. It's just drop in. You don't have to register. It's donation based. So whatever you have.
Oh my God, I'm totally going. Because I rarely meditate with other people. And, I spend a lot of time in my self-care practice alone. Yeah. And so it's always great when I have the opportunity to meditate with a group and feel the energy of everyone in the room. It's really nice.
Yeah, I hardly ever meditate alone. Because I do it with I have to.
And I'm an introvert, and Rachel is, well, I'm an introvert whose kids are grown up, and I have no partner in my life currently, not even a pet. And so our lives are at very different stages too. So there you are. So I'm just going to take a second to do a station ID. This is WRWK 93.9 FM, The Work FM on Facebook. We are live on Facebook right now. So if you're on your computer, you can look. If you know someone who's on their computer, you can text them and suggest that they turn it on. I'm Mary Burris. This is Self-Care Activist, and I'm here with Rachel Douglas, Executive Director of Inner Work Center, and amazing human being. Let's see, where do I want to go from here? Yes. Okay. And support for WRWK is provided by Affordable Home Inspection with over 15 years of experience. Jeremy Rowan, owner and master inspector of Affordable Home Inspection, offers insured and bonded home inspection, including heating systems, air conditioning units, roof condition, electrical service, and interior structural elements. Serving Richmond, Charlottesville, Fredericksburg, Petersburg, Williamsburg, and Alexandria. More information at affordablehomeinspect.com. And if you are enjoying this program, you like what you're hearing on WRWK, please feel free to make a donation. This is an all-volunteer station, and we need your support to stay on the air. So you can go to theworkfm.org and make a donation from there. And we really, truly appreciate that. I'm here with Ron Skinner and volunteer Stephen Johnson, who is an amazing laughter yoga person, by the way. That was brilliant. And Rachel Douglas is talking about self-care, and she is the inspiration for the name Self-Care Activist. So it's a huge honor to have you here. All right, so Rachel is here with us until 5:00, and then who knows what's going to happen after that. Something, of course, will for the final hour of our show today. How does your work match up with, align with your concept of self-care? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, a lot of what I learned about self-care came through my work. So it is very much aligned. I think something you said earlier really struck me, which is about women taking care of themselves. And one of the things that I was faced with when I decided that was actually necessary and not self-indulgent, that it was crucial, was how. I actually didn't know how. Like, what does self-care look like? I had no clue. Like, someone please tell me the options. Does it mean like taking a bath? Does it mean like taking a walk? Like, what does it mean? Mm-hmm. And so I have been exposed to so many numerous practices through the Inner Work Center that I can now, that I've tried on, and now understand what, which ones speak to me and which ones don't. So I have no judgment for the way that anybody takes care of themselves, but they're not all for me.
Right. So what are the things that work for you? You mentioned meditation. What are some other things that you do in your self-care? Practice, I guess, is the best word.
Yeah. So one is massage. So every month I go see my wonderful person, Camille Bird at Sacred Waters, who is like an angel to me. She's incredible, and she is a spiritual experience unto herself. Just walking down the street, she is. And so massage for me is not actually a luxury. It's a basic human need.
Yeah, me too. Oh my gosh.
For me.
Yeah.
So that's a huge piece. Connecting with my friends, connecting with my family, connecting with my friends. That's huge. Being outside, like going to Lewis Larris Park. That's a big recharger for me. Being in my own backyard actually is a huge recharger for me. Just sitting on the deck. Movement when I can, but just focusing on my body in a way that I never focused on before. So recognizing that my body is my connection to the natural world, is my connection to everything. And I'm just starting to find my way into this. But I guess, I was raised in a really, smart, educated family. They're all PhDs actually, except for me. And there's a lot of value on your brain. And then I worked at VCU for like 15 years, and that just reinforced that your body is really a vehicle to carry your brain around. And so over the years now, I've come to see the wisdom that comes out of my body and wanting to take care of my body, and doing that in a way that isn't, I want to be careful about the way that I use my words, because I don't think you need to be able-bodied to do this. So whatever body you have, taking care of it the best you can so that you can connect with other people, with the world. So a huge part of my self-care right now is not just the massage, but I'm seeing a nutritionist, Ashley Manel. She's at it's richmondfoodandmood.com is the email address. They're integrative, and it is the best healthcare I've ever received in my life.
Eating is so important, and what we put into our bodies, it's like in our culture, we don't think about it, and we're so disrespectful with the way we eat and what we consume. It's shocking. And I introduce people to Ayurveda in my coaching because for me, this is a proven method of eating for your body that's been proven for thousands of years. And so I'm not a trend eating person. And that's because I've seen Western science come and go with recommendations based on methods or conclusions come to from reductionist science, which I'm just like, yeah, it takes you 15 years to figure out that you made a mistake. Ayurveda has been around for thousands of years and people are healthy when they do it. So I'm doing that. And it's kind of common sense. Eat fresh food. Oh, eat fresh food, as opposed to food that sits around, or eat things that are not processed.
Yeah.
So are you finding these things out
I'm finding those things out. And also, I tried to follow trend. I needed a guide, right? Because I didn't really know what was healthy, what was not healthy.
Yes.
I stay far away from anything that looks like a diet. I think that's a 4-letter word. I embrace my, I have like a chubby, curvy body, and I embrace that. And I don't want to see any nutritionist that's going to tell me like, you're going to lose weight or this is what's going to happen, because that equates healthy, because it doesn't.
Not necessarily. You're right.
Yeah. Like, what does healthy look like for me? And I'm finding great success through, until like success is measured differently for all people, right? But like I was able to essentially eliminate my chronic pain that I've had since I was 9.
That's fantastic.
Through working with Ashley and her team, Courtney.
Changing your diet.
Changing your diet. It is literally life-changing.
Yeah.
And so all of that is to say, part of my self-care is trying to listen to the wisdom that comes from my body, which is just as valuable as the wisdom that comes from my brain.
Yes. And one thing that you have brought up that I think is really, really important is understanding yourself and what's right for you as part of that piece that's essential in true self-care. Finding the modalities that resonate with you in the moment. It could be, I've heard people say, oh, I can't do meditation. I can't sit still, or I can't calm my thoughts. Who can? I talk to people who, Buddhist monks who Tibetan monks who've been meditating for decades, and they're like, I can't quiet my mind. I'm like, well, if you can't and I can't, then I can still meditate. Okay, awesome. That's great. Or I can't be still. The way I started meditating was walking meditation, a Zen walking meditation. It physically hurt me to sit still. But the benefits of that were immeasurable. And eventually it got to a place where I can sit and be still. Yeah. But, that was that little entry way and understanding what was right for me as opposed to trying to fit into a mold of someone else's vision of what was right. So.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I hear it almost every single day.
I can't meditate?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
not me, but that's something people say.
Yeah, no. I mean, that's what our brain is supposed to do. It's supposed to generate thoughts, right? So that's what it does. So it's doing its job, right? There's nothing wrong. And what I want people to understand is, like, the reason I hear it so often is because that's part of our common humanity. It's a practice, right? So you practice and you get better. Like if you want to build a muscle in your arm, then you do bicep curls, and you don't have a muscle right away. But if you do enough bicep curls, then you get a muscle, and it's easier to lift your weight. So that's exactly how meditation works. Is you try it and you keep trying it. You don't have to like it, just do it, and eventually your muscle gets bigger, and you can do it.
It's more comfortable and meaningful for you. Last week, Benita Condi was here of Create Radical Love, and she gave me, I don't know why I had never thought of this before, but I've used it with a couple of clients this week, and I've used it myself, and it's been tremendous. Particularly for people who are resistant to meditation because they can't quiet their mind, this is brilliant. Taking 2 breaths, just pausing throughout the day and stopping and really breathing and focusing on the breath and expanding the lungs for 2 breaths. And it's like, you can't still your mind. You can do it for 2 breaths. You will be surprised. If you're just focusing on breathing for 2 breaths, your mind will quiet. And so I'm working with this 88-year-old woman who is resistant to meditation, and she started doing this. I said, here's your homework. Set your timer on your phone for an hour, and when it goes off, stop. Take your hands to the sides of your ribs and breathe into your hands, 2 breaths, and then set your timer again. And it's like, just practicing it, she's like, oh, my mind got quiet. And I'm like, yep. That's amazing, right? You can do that for 2 breaths. And if you do it for 2 breaths 5 times, you've meditated for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
So you did 3 minutes today. That's awesome.
That's huge.
Yeah.
One of my favorite teachers, Susan Wilkes, that teaches at the Inner Work Center, did this presentation last week, and she brought her bell, and she said, I want you guys to tell me when you feel like the sound has ended. And so it seemed like a very great, I can recognize when a sound ends. So she chimed the bell, and then there was this intense stillness in the audience, and people started raising their hand. They felt it, and all of those people had just been intently focused for that, for I don't know what it was, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. It was. And they got to experience what it's like to have this meditative moment without knowing that that's what they were doing. They were just so intently focused on the sound. So they used the sound as their anchor.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's cool. So smart.
So cool.
Oh my gosh, I'm totally stealing that. Next time I do a presentation on meditation, I'm totally using that. So I'm just going to take a second to do a storm ID. I'm looking, it says Storm Predictor Center. I don't know if you get these on your phone.
No.
They come every day. I'm like, I just ignore them now. It's like, oh, because it'll, sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not. Okay, station ID. We just have a few more minutes with Rachel Douglas of Inner Work Center. This is WRWK 93.9 FM, The Work. live on Facebook right now on The Work FM. I'm Mary Burris, and I just want to say that support from WRWK is provided by the Thrifty Quaker, located in Midlothian Station Shopping Center at the corner of Midlothian Turnpike and Coalfield Road. The Thrifty Quaker sells donated items to support the work of 12 varying, mostly local charities. Did you know about this?
I didn't.
Well, now you can contact them. Since the Inner Work Center is a nonprofit. This month's sponsored charity is Blessing Warriors RVA, a group that provides direct support to those who are homeless and in need. Information at thriftyquaker.com.
Okay, cool.
Isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
So here's a fundraiser opportunity for you and for us. Have we done this yet? Have we been their pet charity, Ron? Thrifty Quaker, have we been their pet charity yet?
Not this year.
Okay, then.
We were there in the spring last year, and they gave us such a whopping pile of money. We just love them forever.
Well, yeah. So here's a confession. I'm a Quaker, like a card carrying Quaker, and I've been attending the Quaker meeting for many years. But the reason I actually joined, I'm not a joiner, because I'm an introvert. This is not my thing. And I was actually meditating in a Buddhist temple in Tibet, and I heard a very clear voice say, "You need to become a Quaker." And I was like, "Okay, then. The Buddha says I should become a Quaker. I'm doing that." Isn't that crazy?
I have a cool Quaker story. So our board president of the last 3 years, Aubrey Ford, he goes to the Quaker meetings, and when we did our name change, we had, not painlessly, full consensus from the board. And we did that even though it took months.
Quaker, you did the Quaker process?
We did the Quaker process. So everyone was heard. Everyone had their, feelings and thoughts addressed. In a way that felt good. And I really believe that when we had that full consensus vote on changing our name to the Inner Works, I mean, it was a powerful and emotional moment.
Yeah, it's not for type A people, or let me rephrase. It can be very challenging for type A people to go through Quaker process, and maybe I could do a whole show on that, because it is really, as a group, it is an act of self-care. I mean, it's really beautiful, but not it can, for some of us who tend to be a little impatient, it can be interesting. All right, cool. So we have time for one more question. What are you trying to communicate with me?
Well, we have 2 questions from in our comment section.
Oh, excellent.
Comment section?
I don't. What are the questions?
Let me read it to you. Lee Cipher posed 2 questions. Number 1, could an emphasis on the promoting schools, teachers, and gurus end up stunting the agency of the seeker and their ability to take responsibility for their own self-care by providing the answers practices seekers should find for themselves? Other groups also promote spiritual growth programs for profit. Why is this different? That's question number 1.
I'm not sure I understand the question exactly.
I think you're concerned with people having answers given to them rather than finding their answers. And perhaps that's not what you meant to say, but that's what he seems to have taken from it.
Yeah, so I can say, what we actually believe in personal authority, so that you get to decide what your framework is and what it looks like to live a meaningful life. So we won't give you that framework like you might find in a religious a religious institution, or was that what the question was?
I think that was what he was getting at.
Hopefully inspire you to find practices that feel like they add to the meaning of your life. And then I think the other one is about profiting. And so I don't know if I said that. I don't know if I shared that we're a nonprofit. And so
I think his point was that what's wrong with that? Well, the profit-seeking model helping you find religion.
What's wrong with a profit-seeking model?
Find religion or answers?
Well,
those are real different things.
I'm sorry, I'm probably misquoting him, but other groups also promote spiritual growth programs for profit. why is it different? Maybe he's thinking Landmark Ministries. I'm not sure what he's saying exactly. Lee, feel free to type somewhere in there to guide me a little bit. But there's a second question.
Okay, let's go with the second question.
All right.
Maybe that.
And this one is, sorry, I can't see my glowing face, folks, but this is Ron off camera. How does this help in our current time of severe political and environmental crisis? Or in other words, how does this rise beyond an exercise in personal navel gazing?
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. So one piece I already touched on, which is that, there's so much work to do in the world. There's a lot of work to do, which he's alluding to, and you can't do all of the things. So what is your thing to do? And I think that the way that you find out what that is through inner work, that you discover what your work is to do, and then you go out and do that work. So it is connected. Your inner work is connected to your outer work. And then the other thing I want to share amongst that is way bigger. And it's this idea of cultivating the conditions for wisdom and compassion, which is greater work. Everything. So that is not the culture that we live in right now. And if we want to address all of the nonsense that's happening in the world right now, especially with the othering of human beings that are trying to just live their life in a safe and meaningful way also, which is what we all want, then we have to stop the othering. And the way that we do that is by creating the conditions for wisdom and compassion. So wisdom, knowing that we're all connected, and compassion, just caring enough to do that work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you for Lee.
Yeah.
I have a question,
Yeah.
if we have time to fit it in.
Okay.
Oh, I got to give 2 minutes. I think hovering over all of this is the idea that individual practice is actually a part of a larger practice. Perhaps just something we conceive of ourselves, but then we're not alone in this practice. This isn't individuated or navel gazing, as Lee suggested, but there's actually a bigger piece which is kind of implicit.
Yeah, absolutely. Rachel, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I do. I think
Because I have lots of time to address it after you're gone in a few minutes.
I believe that this is the work of the world. Yeah, that this is how we make a difference in our individual lives and as a community and as a larger community and part of the world. I think that we have to work to create different conditions than we have right now. Mm-hmm. And this is that slow work that happens on an individual level, but it's individual, it's the individual work that cannot be done alone.
Mm-hmm.
So earlier in the show, we were talking about the word or the phrase model of self-care versus modeling self-care. And I think in modeling self-care, we're also modeling this greater idea. I mean, the only thing we really have control of is ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we're one drop in this ocean of humanity. And if we can be the best, most pure, thoughtful, compassionate drop there is, then we're helping to purify the entire ocean. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that, okay, so one thing I want to share is that I heard that term from my friend Sasha Vodnik, who was helpful in my introduction to queer activism in Richmond, and I looked up to him a lot. And he moved out to San Francisco, and I was really upset with him because of the whole brain drain thing, that we can't all move to these idyllic places. We have to do the work here. And then I asked, and then I was one of those judgmental people. It's like, so what are you doing right now? Meaning, like, how are you organizing? What are you doing? And he said, I'm modeling self-care. And that really knocked me down. And that was my first sort of consciousness raising into the fact that self-care is not navel gazing. It's not this selfish act. It is a revolutionary act, and that it's a necessary part of repairing the world. And so the energy that I brought to my activism when I was anti all of those things, it was limiting and limited. And I brought down myself. And I also think I was bringing down the movements that I was a part of, because I brought all of this negative energy with me and this anger. And now, through my inner work, through focus and understanding who I am and what I want to bring to the table, I think I'm bringing more of a, what's the word I want to say? It's positive, but it's also personal, and it's this idea of discernment. It's discerning. So I don't do all of the things. I do the things that I've used my discerning lens to do. And this is a lot of that work. It's like sharing what I'm doing right now. That is a lot of the
Yeah.
that is mine to do right now. And so the energy that I'm bringing it's energy giving.
Right.
It's not energy
It's positive.
taking.
I think also the work that we do, the inner work that we do, reveals to us what our gifts are to contribute. Like, not just what the work is, but how we can best be a part of that work. For example, somebody might say, what we need is someone to go knock on doors. And I'm like, I am not that person. I could go knock on doors and, that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a different gift to offer to that. And so to whatever cause. And so I think I would not know the depth and breadth of what and how I can serve without going inward and doing this
That's
work.
what it's all about.
Yeah. Rachel, I hate to say goodbye to you. It's 5:04 and Rachel's going to pick up Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby and Shia, they're in the same place for daycare this summer, which is really nice.
And so she's leaving us now, and it's been fantastic having you. And I look forward to spending some more time at the Inner Work Center. I'm just going to stand up and give her a hug.
Oh, yeah. Well, can I leave some words of wisdom for my 6-year-old?
Well, please.
Oh, yes. Yes,
So
please.
this is the most important thing to remember, is to inhale and to outhale.
I love that. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you for having me.
I will be in touch with you very soon.
Okay. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thanks. Bye,
Great to meet
Rachel.
You too.
Okay, what's this say? Trying to reconnect on
I don't know.
the.
Steven says it's still working, but this says it's not. So apparently,
Okay.
we have more yays than nays.
I hope we got the that beautiful inhale outhale quote from Bobby.
There's nothing on the audio, but the
Okay,
video,
fantastic. All right, so this is Mary Burris. This is Self-Care Activist, and hopefully we're still on the Work FM on Facebook Live. If not, we're here at 93.9 FM, WRWK, serving the universe through the magic of technology. And my guest earlier, Rachel Douglas of Inner Works Center here in Richmond, she's just left. And there's just a void in the room.
I miss
She
her
has
already.
such amazing, positive, and beautiful energy, and does such amazing work for our community. So I'm just going to take a break because now it's just me, Ron, and Steven. So we're going to carry on for the next hour, a little less than an hour. And I just want to say that WRWK is volunteer run. It's an independent public radio station that relies on listener support to continue bringing you great programming. It takes roughly $60 a day to keep WRWK on the air. You can ensure the life of this station by making a donation or volunteering. Information at theworkfm.org. All right. Did you have something to say, Ron?
Yes, I wanted to mention that Lee Carlton, who's the gentleman who does our loops, as well as several other things, he posted that the show reminds him of a show we aired yesterday, Magical Mystery Tour, The Case for Elderhood in a Time of Trouble with Stephen Jenkinson. So you can check our loop from yesterday or check the loop notes from yesterday on the website and find out more about this Magical Mystery Tour, The Case for Elderhood in a Time of Trouble. You can also Google that, and that's a program from Pacifica. Probably something happened in the last week or two.
That sounds amazing. I don't even know what elderhood is, so I better get on
I
that.
think I might be in it.
Maybe. I don't know.
Balls fun in the back of my head.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that with us, Ron.
Sorry. TMI, yeah?
Ron is the producer of Self-Care Activists, and without his
Can't get
help,
rid of him.
I would be in serious trouble every week. He's also the primary supporter of WRWK. So if you want to show him up, please do by donating a lot of money to the station. And just want to let you know that, next week, the Fear Sherpa and author of Your Secret Superpower, Taming Fear to Thrive, Brian Muka, will be my guest on Self-Care Activists. That's July 25th. We'll be talking about his journey in overcoming his own crippling fears and self-doubt so he can help others do the same. That's Self-Care Activists right here on Thursdays. That's what the show is right now. I'm Mary Burris, and we're here till 6 p.m. today. Rachel Douglas of Inner Work Center was our guest earlier. If you missed it, you can catch it on our Facebook page, The Work FM on Facebook. And if you'd like more information about Brian Muka's appearance, that's the Fear Sherpa. He's awesome, by the way. Information on theworkfm.org. Okay, so I want to address that question from, who was it that gave us a
Lee
question
Carlson?
on Facebook? Lee.
One of our volunteer staff / volunteer.
No, before that.
Oh, before.
The person before posed a question and we were struggling to understand it exactly.
Yes, that was another Lee. Hang on a second. Lee Cipher. Cipher.
Lee Cipher. Okay. So one of the things that Rachel and I were talking about was connecting with family and friends and how this is an act of self-care. And I've been lucky enough to do some of that since I moved back to Richmond. So I was away. I take long, many-year vacations from Richmond, and then I come. Oh, is this? Can I read it off of your phone?
Oh, actually, probably can.
Oh, awesome. And so in this go round here, I just moved back from Charlottesville in December. And one reason I moved here is because my mom has been ill, and she is in her late 80s now. And I thought this is a good time to really establish a relationship with her. And it's been absolutely fun doing that. Okay, let's see. Now I have a copy of this question I'm going to see from Lee Cipher. Let's see if I can handle this. Could an emphasis on promoting schools, teachers, and gurus end up stunting the agency of the seeker and their ability to take responsibility for their own self-care? By providing the answers, practices seekers should find for themselves. Okay, this is an excellent question, and it's timely because I've just been reading a book called Range, and actually, Ron, I don't know the author. That's embarrassing because
Range. Oh, you mentioned that book.
Range,
I'll look
yeah,
it up.
I'm now on my phone. If those of you who are watching, yes, I'm looking at it. It's right here on my Audible, because I drive so much. I listen. David Epstein, there he is.
Okay.
Yeah, Range by David Epstein. And I'm actually in the part of this book about education. And he's talking about education and teachers and how we get it backwards in our culture. So what has been proven through research, and I failed to recall the name of the person who conducted the research, to help students find immediate answers, to get immediate positive feedback on learning. And I'm giving air quotes here for those of you who are on the radio. That's a short term. It looks good in the short term, but in the long run, it's damaging to the ability of the students to learn these concepts further up the road. So as an example, let's just say you have a math teacher who is, is teaching a concept in math to a bunch of students, and it's a concept that has to be learned and to learn further math to go on into math class. So you have one teacher who is like constantly sort of guiding the students with answers, if you will. And then you have, and the students are happy because it's easy and they test well in the short term. But then in the long term, they're not getting the concepts aren't sticking, right? Then you have a math teacher of that same grade level who is frustrating the heck out of the kids and frustrating them because they're not giving answers immediately. The kids have to think and struggle and be frustrated and get to the answer themselves. That teacher may not be as popular, and the students may not do as well on a short-term test, but they learn the concept better in the long run. So pick up the range if you're curious about that concept and the broader, better explanation of it. But I'm going to say that any teacher, guru, institution who provides answers is doing a disservice to their population. I like to give reference to the Wizard of Oz when I think about this concept in particular. Dorothy, and the Wizard. This is the movie, the classic with Judy Garland,
My favorite.
in Technicolor, that starts out in black and white when they're in Kansas. I love this movie, and the reason that I love this reference is because A, most people know it, and B, it's just rife with possibility when you're talking about moving through society and social issues and what have you. At any rate, Dorothy meets the Good Witch in the beginning of the story. She goes through the cyclone. The house lands on the Wicked Witch of the East, and Glinda appears. The Good Witch appears and shows Dorothy the road to Oz, right? The road. Follow the yellow brick road. That's her advice. So Dorothy follows the yellow brick road, and she has all these adventures that can be interpreted in a myriad of ways. And if you'd like to talk to me about that at a different time, I'm so happy to elaborate on it. I've thought about this a lot and read books, and this is not my original. I did not come up with this myself. Anyway, Dorothy goes on this journey, and at the end of the story in the movie, there's Glinda the Good Witch, appears again. Dorothy has done the task that she's been assigned by the wizard. The wizard has blown her off. He's gotten in the balloon and left. He doesn't know how to fly it. Dorothy's left there with the lion, the scarecrow, and the Tin Man, and all the beautiful green people of Oz in their fantastic costumes that I don't know who designed them, but they're fabulous.
The Munchkins. Yeah.
Well, they're not the people of the Emerald City. I'm sorry, Ron. You need to watch the movie again. But Glinda appears and she says, "Oh, you've had the power all along to go home." And Dorothy's like, "What?" And I'm paraphrasing, of course. And she's like, "Yeah, just click your heels 3 times and say a mantra, by the way. There's no place like home," right? "And you'll go home." And Dorothy's like, Why didn't you tell me this before? I just went through all this horrible traveling and the face of death with the wicked witch and all of this. Why didn't you just tell me I could do that? And she goes, you had to learn it for yourself. You wouldn't have believed me. You had to learn it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Dorothy, if Glinda the Good Witch is the best, she's the best teacher because Dorothy has to go through the struggle. She has to go through the frustration to learn the lesson herself. There's no place like home. And that home, people, if you want to translate it metaphorically, inner work. Dorothy has to do the inner work to get through all of the stuff. And the Tin Man represents the man who doesn't have a heart. Every girl's run into that guy, and you need to learn to avoid him. The Scarecrow, the guy who doesn't have a brain. Oh yeah, we've all met him too, right? And the Lion, he's gay. That they make him gay in the movie. That's the end of it. He's totally. You can chase after gay guys all you want, cis women, but you know what? You'll have great friends and you'll have excellent fashion advice and you'll go to fun parties. But he's not going to be the mate you're looking for in the long run. You'll be your friend forever and be an awesome friend. But if you are looking for something different than that. So, Dorothy has to learn all these lessons and she's got to go through the field of poppies, right? This is a drug trip. She's got to go through the whole thing. I mean, that covers every vice there is, really. She has to learn these lessons for herself. And that's the whole point. She's got to do the inner work. She has to be frustrated. She's got to learn it. So this is my metaphor for, if you've got a guru or a teacher or religion or whatever that gives you all, just spoon feeds you the answers, you need to question that. Or at least that's my recommendation. Question that. I love it when my clients and my students question me because it gives me an opportunity to share my journey and then an opportunity to say to them, if this doesn't work for you, let's find a different path. Or are you just frustrated? Frustration is good. Embrace it. Get excited about it because it means you are progressing. Okay.
Well said.
This is the problem without having somebody else here to ask questions because then.
What are you going to do, a volunteer?
Ask for people to call in. Don't forget that.
Stephen has just made a brilliant suggestion. He is going to be a fantastic producer when Ron is away. So if you have a question or a comment, if you agree or disagree with anything I've just said, if you love the movie The Wizard of Oz by MGM with, actually I'm not even going to limit it to that version of it. Also The Wiz, which I saw on Broadway, which was absolutely fantastic and is currently running, just by the way, at Virginia Rep. And there's a movie version in it. I saw it on Broadway with Michael Jackson.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. And Stephanie Mills, who was unbelievable. Anyway, you can call 804-464-1089. That's 804-464-1089. And something will happen with the phone.
Or type it into Facebook.
I'll
Or
answer
you
the
can-
phone.
Or you can put it in on Facebook Live. That's the Work FM on Facebook. And we're live. We're still there. Hi.
We're live.
All right. So let's see. This is 93.9 FM, The Work, WRWK. I'm Mary Burst. This is Self-Care Activist. I'm here with Ron Skinner, my fantastic producer, and volunteer Stephen Johnson, who's amazing for being here today. Thank you, Stephen. And I just want to say that support for WRWK is provided by Affordable Home Inspection with over 15 years of experience. Jeremy Rowan, owner and master inspector of Affordable Home Inspection, offers insured and bonded home inspection in Richmond, Charlottesville, Fredericksburg, Petersburg, Williamsburg, and Alexandria. More information at affordableHomeInspect.com. Okay, Ron and Stephen, do you have any questions or any comments about what we talked about with Rachel at all?
I think it's exciting that we have self-care as a theme for a show, because self-care is certainly something we need in our day and age of designed upsets, coming from not necessarily the media as a source, but from the media as a repetition from our political leaders who just, even the people who seem to be in favor of having a middle class and democracy seem to have trouble getting along with each other. So it's good to have, I think, the discernment that she mentioned is a key piece when picking through the news. What do you really take seriously? What do you say, I'm waiting for the rest of this story? Or maybe even say, who invented that?
You know, that's really interesting. You should bring that up, because just today, something popped up on my Facebook page about a woman who, I should say, was written by a woman who really wanted to learn more about the situation with children being detained at borders, particularly in Texas, where apparently Florida and Texas, where apparently there's all kinds of horrible issues to be addressed. And she wanted to not rely on any official news source. She wanted to do the research herself to see what was really going on.
Right.
And what she found out was terrifying, I have to say, about who the people are. Apparently there's a private for-profit company that claims that it costs $750 or $775 or something a day per child detained, and that they're doing the best they can.
Yes.
And the people who are on the board of this company are very interestingly connected to our United States government.
Oh.
And these people are making big fat profits.
Steve.
And so I don't really understand how that works. But I thought it was fascinating that are you going to come on with me right now?
It looks silly for you to talk to the wall.
I'm not talking to the wall. We need to just scooch it this way. So we're moving the camera right now so that Ron is visible, and Ron and I are here together. And Stephen did that work. Oh, scooch over, he says, Mary. I have to bring the mic with me. All right, are you happy now? You happy with that visual?
It just seems fair that people would know what they're looking anyway.
All right. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting that this woman did her own research, and what she found out was really, really interesting.
It's crossed my mind as an interesting generality to make about the president's leadership in the White House, that when there's a dilemma of human scale, instead of rushing to help, there's a rush to make profit from it. And this, I think...
This is nothing new.
This is nothing new, but
It's absolutely nothing new.
It's vital that we grasp what's going on here, because if we want the world to work better, it would seem that finding ways to fix it would be better than finding ways to make money from its brokenness. I just wanted to make that point, and perhaps I'm being unfair to those involved, but it does seem, I swear, if you gave me a chance to make $750 a night on a child, and all I had to do was provide a concrete floor, I'd at least give them a blanket or a toothbrush.
That's noble of you.
I would give them a blanket.
You support the station. That's pretty amazing, right there. I think this speaks to earlier on today on Self-Care Activist Rachel Douglas was my guest. She had to leave at 5. That was our agreement. She needs to go pick her kids, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And she was talking about this idea of otherness and how that's nonsense. I loved how she phrases the idea of otherness is nonsense. And I'm going to say that I personally, and I'm not responsible for anyone else's interpretation other than my own, but I personally see or experience some of the things that are happening in our governing body currently as a big fat sign of otherness. And on my way here, I was listening to NPR, and I was listening to a story about Donald Trump's speech last night. He's running for president again, and he had a rally, and people were chanting, "Send her home," referring to a United States senator who was born here in the United States, and she happens to be of a brown skin tone and a female.
Oh, 2 strikes.
Well, I think those are 2 amazing things. You might use the word strike, but I see them as assets, and I see them as assets to, I'm glad that she's involved in our government in the way that she is, and I want more people like her to be more involved in our government. But I was appalled. It sounded to me like these people were really participating in otherness in a big way on 2 counts. And in the fact that this is a female, and this there seems to be a movement in our government on a misogynistic movement or acceptance that I thought was unacceptable for decades, but I guess I live in a bubble. And because the evidence is saying that something is different than I thought. And that also, this person's heritage is from another country. Well, I'm just going to say everybody's heritage is from another country here, except Native Americans. And you could argue, really, if we wanted to go back in time to, before there were any humans on this continent, that we're all immigrants.
That's right.
And to say that one group should go back to where they came from is absolutely ridiculous. That's the biggest sign of otherness I can imagine. Everybody who is here deserves to be here. That's it.
That seems pretty simple. Well, I have a thought on that.
Maybe I'm being simplistic.
If you'll permit me.
Yes.
I think it's vital, and when it comes to discernment, that we regard Mr. Trump as an actor. His sole purpose is to get you off your center. And if he does that, he's succeeded. He has no energy whatsoever himself, except the energy he steals from you by getting you upset. So getting upset about something he does to upset you is the wrong answer. The right answer is, what's he doing now? My gosh, he'll do anything for attention, won't he? He'll do anything for attention. And how did we give him the baton to lead this parade? Wow. Gosh.
Well, Ron, I think there's a lot. You've just made a bunch of assumptions. And
true.
I think that assumptions are irresponsible journalism.
Uh-oh.
And
I'm under fire.
I would just prefer that I would prefer phrasing opinions or assumptions differently, rather than making assumptions.
Well, I'm sorry.
Speaking truths is different than.
I'm sorry. Let me reframe that. If you study the entirety of Mr. Trump's life, his functions, his successes in life have been as an entertainer, and he's done very well with it. We're not sure what he really has or doesn't have. He claims to be a billionaire 10 times over. We're not really sure because everybody challenges him. He challenges them. He's to me, these assumptions I've drawn from the fact that A, he's ashamed of his tax returns or afraid of them. It's hard to say exactly what that means. And the fact that he throughout his life has had a pattern pretty much of being hard to have a legitimate conversation with. And this is how he avoids uncomfortable topics. And
Okay,
I do draw from that. Some information.
Ron, I appreciate your support and I
Shut up.
appreciate your help, but I want this to be a safe space
Mm.
focused on self-care.
All
for
right, I'm
people.
sorry.
So
sorry.
if we could bring the topic back to self-care.
Yes, well, funny you should mention that, because I was thinking to myself, the reason I drew up the idea of community and self-care was because it occurred to me that if you practice self-care, you're not as likely to be drawn into a situation where you need to cater to a crowd to find out if you're doing the right thing. You'll have a sense of yourself and of the world that works, and you'll be less likely to be drawn into assumptions like I just drastically made, because you'll have a center and you'll be able to say, that was an off center right, just as you just did.
All right, so I'm going to give you an example of a conversation. I'm going to give you an example maybe of what you're saying, but I'm also going to bring up a point, a counterpoint to it. So I have a friend of many, many years who I unknowingly to me until recently is a white supremacist.
Wow.
I had no idea how I didn't pick up on this is a mystery. It's absolutely blatant. This person flies a Confederate flag in front of their house. Like I never noticed it before because I don't look for those things. Like that's not, it's not in my wheelhouse, right? I'm not a part of that group. So I'm not looking for their symbols. I'm not looking for their signs. I'm not looking for it. I never really noticed it in his personal behavior in our interactions with other people. And when it dawned, and it literally, the word dawned is perfect. I know it's overused, but it really dawned on me one day. And I asked him point blank, because this is not something I believe in. I believe in inclusion and obviously, I believe the way that I talk about it. I believe in inclusion and I believe in supporting people and I believe in equality. I, as a Quaker, I mentioned I'm a Quaker earlier, equality is one of the 7 principles of Quakerism. And so in my shock of this dawning moment that this person was a white supremacist, I very calmly asked, "Are you a white supremacist?" And then I asked some other questions. Now I had a lot of choices in that moment of how I could react. Mm-hmm. I could have just turned and walked away and never talked to this person again. I could have cut off my relationship with them. Some people have suggested that would have been the right reaction. But instead, I decided to learn about this person's perspective. And through our conversation, what I realized was this person's done a lot of self-work. This person meditates every day. Wow. They have been involved in a spiritual organization for many years that promotes good and loving, caring, what have you. This person has traveled all over the world and met with all kinds of spiritual leaders. And what I realized is this person has done a tremendous amount of self-work, and they have simply come to a different conclusion than I have come to. They are on their own path, and this is their path, and they are standing in their truth in this moment. I am not. Who am I to judge them standing in their own truth in this moment? I am no one. I am merely standing in my own truth in this moment. I grew up here in Richmond. When I was a kid, they had the toy parade and the tobacco parade down Broad Street, and I would go and they would play Dixie. The high school bands would play Dixie, and people would stand up and take their hats off and put their hands on their hearts.
Yeah.
There were separate bathrooms for African Americans or people of color.
Yeah.
Hell with get named just African American in that context. And I could have easily grown up with the attitude that there was some superiority based on race. But that's not what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's unfair of me to judge someone who is standing in their truth, because there's one truth, but there are many paths. And this person is simply on a journey, and I'm on a journey too. And I'm not saying I'm wrong, but I could be completely wrong. I'm not saying they're right, but they could be completely wrong. In the greater scheme of things, in the world, I know what my truth is, and my truth is inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So there you are.
I don't want you to think I was dissing Mr. Trump. I was just saying he comes from a perspective where his
And I don't want to ever hear that name again on this show,
well, I think
because every time we say it, we give it energy.
I'm sorry. I guess what I'm saying is some people have odd viewpoints, and that's true to them, and that's them. And I don't want to be seen as judging them because I'm here and they're there. But some people's truths don't extrapolate well around the planet. They collide with other things. And this
But it's
is
their truth.
That's the truth, right? Well, I think humanity is at a point, and I'm sorry if I seem like a... Anyway, it seemed like humanity is at a point where we cannot continue to pretend that if I eliminate all the people that don't look like me, I'll have a good world or anything of that sort. We have to find ways for diversity and for other reasons to keep intact the life that's available now, and to keep intact the resources that are available now, because we're in this together. This is our little spaceship, and we have to start figuring this out. And people who have things that are, or as
this is your truth.
Yeah.
So instead of,
Well, okay.
how about saying so you could phrase this, I believe this, instead of,
well,
try that.
I believe that
There you go.
that if we don't learn to get along on this planet, we'll all destroy each other. And that seems like an unpleasant place to go. That's why I've arrived at this truth for myself. And you're right. The world could continue going where it's going. I would just assume we find a course that works for more of us than less of us.
That's a beautiful truth. I love it. That's gorgeous. Thank you for sharing it.
That's all.
Thank you so much for sharing it. So I want to also thank you for inspiring me with a topic that Rachel brought up. And I'm gonna do that after a little station break, because we're on WRWK. This is the Work FM. We are streaming live on our webpage, theworkfm.org. And we are also streaming live on Facebook at the Work FM. And so you can watch Ron and I talking about living in your truth on Facebook Live. You could also just listen to us at 93.9 The Work FM. And we are serving the universe through the magic of technology. So WRWK is volunteer run and operated. It's independent public radio station that relies on listener support to continue bringing you great programming, opinionated or not opinionated. It takes roughly $60 a day to keep WRWK on the air. You can ensure the life of this station by making a donation or volunteering. Information at theworkfm.org. Do we have any comments after that? I'm like shocked.
Actually, the last comments posted were the ones that...
Sorry, that's my chair.
I posted your comments about the Wizard of Oz, and that's been it on the comments.
Okay, awesome. So one of the things Ron and I were just talking about is one thing that he mentioned is the current political situation. And I just want to say this, like, in terms of energy, and Rachel was talking about when we do self-work and the act of self-care, of doing self-work, and we learn who we are. I hear something. What is it?
I did too. Oh.
It's the headphones.
We learn about ourselves. We can discern best how to serve and for what causes we wish to serve. And that is really beautiful and a really important work to do. And I really loved the way she phrased it and she talked about it. And if you are just tuning in, Rachel Douglas was my guest a little bit earlier on the show. She's the executive director of the Inner Work Center. And you can listen to our conversation on the Work FM Facebook page. Anyway, where we put our energy, where we focus is where our energy goes. And where our energy goes, we fuel whatever that is. So Rachel was talking about when she was an activist, she was anti everything. And she felt this, you know, when you're anti stuff, this is negative energy that you're putting out into the world. A transformation, a personal transformation happened for her when she decided to be pro stuff, for things. So for inclusion, for diversity, for whatever. Like, what are you for? Like, I think that's a really important piece of self-work to do. What are you for? How do you know what do you believe in? And then putting your energy, which is positive energy. When you're for something, you're putting out positive energy and putting that positive energy towards that thing. You know, inclusion, acceptance, compassion. You know, we need to, if those are things we want on the planet, this is where we need to put our energy on the planet. All right. If you have questions about that or comments to make, you can call us here at 804-464-1089. This is the Work FM, or you can go on our Facebook page right now and put a comment in the section. And we'll read your question. We'll answer your question. Anybody have any questions for me? Stephen, do you have a question? Stephen is our volunteer today. You want to come over to the mic?
You talked about one truth, many paths.
One truth, many paths, yes.
Yeah. When Ron started talking, it was like he had a truth that you didn't agree with.
I disagreed with the way it was phrased.
Okay. So can you talk about the one truth, many paths, just to clarify?
Oh, yes. I would love to talk about one truth, many paths. So, Swami Satchidananda, who is the founder of Yogaville Ashram and also did the opening invocation at Woodstock. So he's kind of a boomer hero. Good friends with Peter Max, the artist, who's another boomer hero, or at least in my opinion. Swami Satchidananda, and he will tell you this wasn't his original thought, but it's an important. There's one truth in the world, but there are many paths to arriving to that truth. So Swami Satchidananda's thing, if you will, or two important things. The first thing is that he accepted all religions that have the premise of love, acceptance, and compassion. And he in the hall, the great hall at the ashram, which is in Buckingham County. If you've never been there, it's the largest residential ashram in the United States of America. It's a pretty interesting place. In the hall where you dine, or in the main hall, there's pictures of saints and sages and swamis from centuries that are important. And they're meant to be there to influence us, but also to show us all these different paths. And in the Lotus Temple at Yogaville, which is also just a really extraordinary place all by itself, I mean, it's this big, giant pink lotus built in the landscape of rural Virginia. It's beautiful and special, and to me, humorous all at the same time. The interior of that lotus temple has little kiosks all around. It's like a circular big meditation room. It has small kiosks around the sides of it featuring different religions. I'm sure I'm not going to name them all, but they are inclusive of Judaism, Christianity, Jainism, Native American beliefs, Buddha. Did I say Buddhism already? Islam. I know I'm leaving some.
Sure.
Taoism, yes.
Unknown and known religions also.
Yes, thank you. Known and unknown religions also. And there are, from each of these kiosks, neon lights that go up to the top of the temple and meet. And then they come down, this light travels down in a pillar that comes down to the center of this lotus. And the idea of that the center of the lotus is truth, right? So one truth, many paths. So we can find truth through organized religion. We can find truth through non-organized spiritual activities. We can find truth in almost any the paths are limitless. And I think this is part of what excites me about like self-exploration, self-care as self-exploration as an act of self-care, is finding out what is your path, what's right for you. They're all correct. It's the idea of inclusion rather than otherness, right? We have, we've seen throughout history religious groups fighting each other, trying to eliminate each other, populations trying to eliminate other populations, cultures trying to eliminate other cultures. As Rachel said, this is nonsense, because we're all part of one fabric, like the Swami says, one truth, many paths. I also described earlier, I was talking to Rachel, this moment where I realized I had this message that I needed to become a Quaker. What I didn't share is that in that moment, before I heard that message very clearly, and I'm literally standing in one of the most sacred sites in Kumbum Monastery in Tibet, in a Tibetan monastery, and I'm thinking I'm going to be inspired to become a Tibetan Buddhist. And instead, the first thing I heard was Swami Satchidananda's voice, clearly in my mind, saying, "One truth, many paths." Then I heard in a different voice, and I don't know whose voice that is, say, "You need to become a Quaker." That's pretty crazy. So when I came back to Quaker meeting and I said, I want to become a Quaker, and I went through a committee to do that, and I said, the Buddha told me to become a Quaker. And they're like, well, we're not going to argue with the Buddha, so you're in. They gave me my card. That's not really how it went down, but that's how I joke about it. The other thing is, what was it? Because it was like super important. Another piece of Swami Satchidananda's teachings. Oh, self-care. In the ashram, in this yogic life in the ashram, there is a relatively rigorous prescription for self-care. And so I had the privilege of living at the ashram for a month last year. I was going through it was the beginning of a very interesting transition in my life. And I went to Yogaville for a space to just kind of sort myself out, before trying to handle these big problems that were presented to me, or challenges that were presented to me at that time. The rigor of daily life in the ashram, your options begin like this, and this is prescribed. As a resident, you're supposed to be doing these things. Meditating for an hour at 5 o'clock in the morning in the winter. It's 5 o'clock. For guests, it's like 6 o'clock. They have 2 meditations, 5 and 6. But if you live there, you're supposed to go to 5 o'clock. That includes pranayama, breathing practice. It includes chanting, or which is a form of bhakti yoga, the yoga of ritual. Chanting is also very cleansing for the soul, for the spirit, for the emotions, for the mind. So there's breath work, there's chanting, and there's silent meditation. And so that's how your day begins. Then there is the practice of yoga asana, practicing the poses for an hour and a half following. And then there's breakfast, and then there's service. So you participate in karma yoga. The Swami says we take meticulous care of our bodies and our minds so that we can be of service to others. If you're physically weak, you can't go out and do the things you need to do to help other people. You need to be healthy. You need to be resistant to disease. You need to be able to move things and do stuff. So that's the yoga, the yoga asana practice. You need to be clear and strong in your mind. And so these other practices make us clear in our mind, our body, and our spirit. So this is, the doctrine of self-care that I believe in, that you take care of yourself not only to feel good, but so that you're in the best place mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually to help other people. Thank you for asking, Stephen. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, station ID time.
Oh, very nice.
We're on WRWK 93.9 FM, serving Chesterfield, Henrico, Richmond, Goochland, Hanover, Powhatan, Midlothian, and the whole universe.
Entire universe.
The entire universe.
Nothing left out.
The entire universe.
All paths.
All the paths, yes. I'm Mary Burris. This is Self-Care Activist. I'm here every Thursday from 4 to 6. Earlier today, we had Rachel Douglas of Inner Work Center speaking to us about her path for self-care, and she is the influence for the name Self-Care Activist for this show. And I just want to mention that next week, Brian Muka is going to be on the show. He is the Fear Sherpa and author of Your Secret Superpower, Taming Fear to Thrive. Brian's going to be my guest on the 25th. That's Christmas in July. We're going to be talking about his journey in overcoming his own crippling fears and self-doubts so he can help others do the same. That's right here on Self-Care Activist, 4 o'clock next Thursday, 93.9 WRWK, and the Work FM live on Facebook. Information at theworkfm.org. And if you have a question or a comment, you can reach us here at 804-464-1089. All right, do we have anything up on the boards yet?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any comments or questions?
Nothing new.
All right. Awesome sauce.
Yes.
Oh, and we only have 6 minutes left.
6 minutes. Well,
That's so sad.
It's time for a few more truths.
Yes, a few more truths.
Well, one of the truths I'd like to focus on is participation in our fine community, the community WRWK, LPFM, and the community in getting a good vote together so citizens can say, wow, here's what I feel about this, that, and the other thing. Not that we ever get into politics here, not in this show. That we participate.
One truth, many paths.
And I think it's really important that people not frame anything as right or wrong, good or bad. They say, is this working? Is this working or not? Let's just see, is this really working or not? And in those terms, using a long-term frame, I think we'll arrive at something collectively useful. That's how I frame that P word with two four-letter words in combined, politics.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was raised in the 60s, and I have older sisters who were very much part of protesting for things and whatnot, and probably mostly for fun when they were younger. But, you know, I remember, what was it, a bumper sticker? Don't trust anyone over 30.
Yeah.
And question authority. Question authority.
Yeah.
And I think questioning authority is any authority is really important. And this is how we learn, and this is how we discover what is our path, what is right for us and what is not right for us, what is our truth. So is this working? I think that's an amazing question, Ron. Thank you for posing that. Is this working? And not just the news or whatever, but everything. Our education system, our the way we have food distributed, raised and distributed in our country, the way we distribute the wealth, the laws that we have concerning policy, or who can vote and who can't vote, or there's lots of things to question.
Yes.
Is this working? It's a really good question.
The pragmatist view of the world. The positive pragmatist. How's that?
That's a good name for a radio show, The Positive Pragmatist. I'd like to see that. I'd like to hear that one.
We'll start it next week.
Okay, you've said it. Now that's on you.
It'll be remote broadcast. Anyway.
So, if you are interested in learning more about Inner Work Center, information is at innerworkcenter.org.
I posted it.
Great. Thank you for doing that, Ron. If you're interested in learning more about my private Facebook group, the Self-Care Activists, Mary Burris on Facebook is a good place to start.
Not the other Mary Burris.
No, you know what? There are several. Isn't it? It's so disappointing to see.
2.
There are like 10.
Wow.
In fact, I just friended one of them because I was like, we have the same name. We should get to know each other. What do people say about you? Yes. And we are, I just want to talk about the sponsors real quick. Again, for those of you who are just tuning in, support for WRWK is provided by the Thrifty Quaker. It's located in Midlothian Station Shopping Center at the corner of Midlothian Turnpike and Coalfield Road. The Thrifty Quaker sells donated items to support the work of 12 varying, mostly local charities each year. This month's sponsored charity is Blessing Warriors RVA, a group that provides direct support to those who are homeless and in need.
Oh.
Information at thriftyquaker.com. And also, support is provided by Affordable Home Inspection by Jeremy Rowan, owner and master inspector of Affordable Home Inspection, offers insured and bonded home inspection, including heating systems, air conditioning units, roof condition, electrical services, and interior structural elements, serving Richmond, Charlottesville, Fredericksburg, Petersburg, Williamsburg, and Alexandria. More information at affordablehomeinspect.com. And of course, we can't forget my wonderful producer, Ron Skinner.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he provides a lot of support for WRWK, not just as a producer and fantastic volunteer, but also financially. So if you want to support WRWK, you can go to theworkfm.org and see how to do that. And also, we would love you to come and volunteer for the station. So financial donations and volunteering are important ways to support WRWK. And we'd love to have you. Information at wrwk.org.
We're grateful for stuff like that.
Yes, we are. Oh my gosh, it's 6:01. Heavens. I'm going to out and turn this over to Ron. Thank you so much for listening. This is Mary Burris, self-care activist. And here we go. Breathe in for Om. Om. Thank you so much for listening and your support.
Thank you, Mary. Moving back to the loop, which is, it'll be an abrupt change to Democracy Now! We've had a tumultuous day, and that dear woman who hangs out in that sphere is going to tell us all about it. So fasten your seatbelt. Here comes Democracy Now!
So, for the benefit of Puerto Rico, as his people are calling for, he ought to resign.
We'll speak with Melissa Mark Viverito in New York and go to Puerto Rico for an update. Then to Syria. After protests against the regime of President Bashar al-Assad began in 2011, a young economics student began filming on a cell phone in her native city of Aleppo. For 5 years, Wa'ad al-Khatib documented her life and the lives of those around her to make an award-winning documentary titled Forsama.
Sama, I know you understand what's happening. I can see it in your